Hello everybody and welcome back to EVtheWorld. My name is Joel Knott and I would like to sincerely thank all of you that have watched these videos, that have subscribed to these videos, and those of you who have liked the videos. I'm not going to ask you right now anyway to do any of that, but I just appreciate those of you who have. So thank you very, very much from the bottom of my heart. I really mean it. I didn't know how our response was going to be to this channel, but yeah, I really appreciate it, considering there's been no marketing, nothing around this channel. It's just been simply put onto YouTube. Everyone has organically found it. Really, really appreciate it. So thank you so much. The reason we're here today is we're going to talk about some news from March 2023. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, our first article today is from Inside EVs. Now, Tesla Roadster batteries are failing, revealing end-of-life symptoms. While the Roadster's original battery packs are still going strong, the upgraded ones are dying. Okay, well, I must admit, Tesla Roadsters are way before when I was really paying any attention to EVs, so let's see what they have to say. Gruber Motor Company, a Tesla service provider with particular focus on the original Roadster, has released detailed information on how the packs in those cars are beginning to reach their end of life. According to the company, this info can teach us the symptoms to expect when multi-cell battery packs in many long-range EVs that came after the Roadster begin to reach their end of life. Interesting. The video published on Gruber's YouTube channel explains Roadsters with batteries reaching their end of life will experience a significant decrease in power when their packs begin to fail, being unable to exceed 60 miles per hour, safely merge onto a highway, or even go up hills. The symptoms are subtle at first, with one affected owner describing it as a squishy pedal feel, but then increasing quickly, eventually rendering the car undrivable. These findings, though, come from an unexpected source. Gruber has discovered that while Roadsters with their original 200-mile range battery packs are still healthy, cars fitted with the upgraded 400-mile range pack that Tesla began offering in 2016 are the ones starting to fail. Okay, that's interesting. So, okay, here, this is good. The very first Tesla Roadster sold back in 2008 and are now 15 years old. This is fantastic. Not that the long-range batteries are failing, but this sort of story I think is fantastic. If people read this, and I'll get a little bit more of it, but if people read this and put it into some perspective, because I notice that internal combustion engine fanatics, the ones who just hate on EVs, the first thing they want to point out is, as soon as an EV battery pack fails, it'll cost more to replace the battery pack than it will the value of the car, or than the value of the car. Now, yes, and if you watched my introduction video last week, I did say that some of these things are true, but let's put it into context though. Who hasn't heard of or owned, and I can tell a very short story about owning a less than 15-year-old car where the engine has failed and the cost of replacing either sometimes the engine or even the transmission, another story, replacing those items costs more than the value of the car. Now, my two quick examples. We have within the company, we have a Mazda CX-5. It has a common rail diesel engine in it. It has less than 60,000 miles, 100,000 kilometers, less than. It is a 2012, if I remember correctly, so 11 years old. That car's engine failed 12 months, 18 months ago, and the cost of that was almost in parity to the value of the vehicle. Quite literally, it was about a $20,000 car, and by the time, and we did choose to put a new or newly reconditioned engine into it with new turbochargers, we spent the right money on it to keep it going, but it cost us $18,000 to get that car back up and running. Now, you know, these are the things we talk about. This happens all the time. Even if it's not on parity, sometimes, you know, it can cost $5,000+ to change an engine in a normal internal combustion engine, a car. My Mercedes, real quick. The gearbox failed in that. $8,000 for an old 2006, and this was probably 2015, 2006 ML350. So it was a petrol V6 ML, and it failed. And it cost $8,000 to repair the gearbox. I mean, seriously. Anyway. Gruber cites the so the very first Tesla was sold back in 2008 and are now 15 years old. Gruber cites the automaker's original CTO, J.B. Straubel, as as claiming the expected lifespan of those original first-generation multi-cell battery packs was 10 years. I think that's very realistic. However, Straubel himself, who owns one of the earliest Roadsters, remarked publicly last year he was surprised to report his car is still going strong, and he has now revised his estimate of the original pack's lifespan to up to 15 years. Gruber's own data supports this, with the company reporting that most of the Roadsters it services with its original 200-mile range battery pack are still healthy, with no signs of slowing down. Look, they tried to put a long-range battery pack in there. It didn't work. It was early days. But and look, this is not hating on Teslas. This article, I mean, it's not hating on Teslas, but you know, it's an emerging technology. Well, certainly the use electricity is not an emerging technology, but the use of electricity and batteries in this form is an emerging, although centuries old, technology. So you know, cut them a bit of slack. A lot of internal combustion engines failed very early in the piece as well. So. And still do today. Like, I mean, there's horror stories from so many different manufacturers who still build lemons of cars. So anyway. All right, moving right along. This is the first city to ban gas-powered taxis in its fleet. Taxis fit for the future. The industry is ready and willing to leave the combustion engine age behind. I don't know why that T is in brackets, but anyway. Hailing a cab in Hamburg, Germany. Lovely city. If you've ever been to Germany to start with, go to Hamburg. It's fabulous. Go to the little island off the side called Westerland, or Sylt, it's also called. It is a fabulous island, great spot to vacation. Hailing a cab in Hamburg, Germany is about to ensure a more eco-friendly ride. According to Cleantechnia, Hamburg is setting a precedent in Germany and perhaps worldwide by mandating hydrogen or electric-powered taxi fleets by 2025. Well, I would assume that most of them are going to be electric-powered taxi fleets. That would make the most sense at this point in time. The ban on gas-powered cabs followed recent passage of climate laws in the region that paves the way for a surge of cleaner taxis. The mandate is part of a plan that includes more public transit and underground and suburban trains in an effort to reduce air pollution. I love this. I speak of this often. I have mentioned it on this channel, but I'm a huge believer in different levels of emissions. Now, I'm not talking about levels in a percentage or levels in a parts per million or anything like that, or tonnage or anything. I'm simply talking about my belief of the ground level emissions, or I don't even have a term for it, high in the sky emissions, we'll call it, but ground level emissions. I truly believe if we can breathe in less of those that are basically forcing their way into our lungs via our nose and mouth, and potentially even via our skin. Now, I know the argument could always be made about the emissions up in the sky, and I'm a huge fan of reducing those. Let's just make this world cleaner and better. Fabulous. But if we can start with those ground level emissions, it has to be healthier for us, particularly for people who are living in the cities. Go out into the country, breathe the air. It's fabulous. If we could have that same air from the country in the cities, that would be amazing. It might be a pipe dream, but still fabulous pipe dream. The taxi measure is estimated to reduce harmful emissions by about 25,000 tonnes a year. Leipzig in Germany have already, not mandated, but have done this. My father-in-law worked for a company called, oh my goodness, it slipped me now, but it'll come back to me. They use Nissan Leafs, and that was in 2015, 16. He was driving for them. Clever Shuttle, that was the name, which is a strange name, Clever Shuttle, but that was based in Leipzig. It started, I believe, as a private company, but I know it later sold out to Deutsche Bahn. And Deutsche Bahn, actually, let's open it up. Deutsche Bahn have put some more infrastructure in Clever Shuttle. Yeah, Leipzig. Let's go with that. Okay. And Deutsche Bahn have put in, there it is. There's a great photo. At the Hauptbahnhof, so the main train station in Germany, they've now put in a bunch of infrastructure to be able to recharge this fleet of taxis. I don't believe that was there before when it was a more privately owned company. I'm pretty sure that was put in, but I could be wrong. But it was fabulous. It is fabulous. He worked, well, that was 3 years ago, that photo. But yeah, as I was saying, I was talking more around the 2015 era. Okay, let's go back to that. So there are about 350 cleaner cabs cruising Hamburg. The industry is ready and willing to leave the combustion engine behind. Okay, that was the title at the beginning. The e-taxis. So e-taxis, I mean, I'm guessing they're sort of leaning towards electric. The e-taxis have also proven to be reliable, convenient, and cheaper to operate than combustion-powered taxis. Fabulous. In a letter to the taxi industry, Jacques said on Hamburg.com that the city has ambitious carbon goals. The taxi business can play a crucial part in the plan to cut harmful carbon pollution by 1.4 million tons by 2030. This is fabulous. This is where EVs have their use case. Everyone will bash on range, etc. But going back to my father-in-law who was driving for Clever Shuttle, they used the Nissan Leaf, and it didn't have huge range when it first came out. And yes, some of the drivers were complaining about it in the fact that they didn't have a huge amount of range. And yes, in winter when they had the heater on, we know all this stuff. But it was really revolutionary that they were doing this in this time. And I think it was a really good example of how it can actually work. And then ultimately, a huge company, Deutsche Bahn, DB, I mean, it's a massive company. Eventually, they either wholly bought it or bought a majority share. I'm not sure. I know there was a purchase of some level. So anyway, fabulous. Great stuff. Love hearing these sort of stories. What have we got? Ford. Gas-powered vehicles are paying for their own funeral. That's a rather clickbaity sort of title. Gas-powered cars, trucks, and SUVs are still paying the bills for automakers as they pile into electric vehicles. Okay, this is interesting. I see where they're going with this. Why it matters. EVs are the future, but getting to that future will be expensive. True. Driving the news. Ford revealed Thursday that it expects to lose $3 billion in its electric vehicle division in 2023, despite early sales success of the F-150 Lightning and Mach-E. And I think that point there is the early sales success. I think there's been I know there's been a few issues along the way, but anyway, it's teething. This is what I was saying before, like with these early Tesla battery packs. They're trying things. They've got to work their way through it all. But Ford expects to turn an overall profit before interest, taxes and depreciation of $9 billion to $11 billion for the year. I mean, they're still profitable. That's a massive, massive profit. The company is one of the only automakers that separates its EV operations from the rest of its business for financial reporting purposes. Absolutely. I think most other manufacturers just pile it all together and we don't get to see, oh, they're losing money in that division, but they're making it on that side. So at least they're being transparent. I think that's fabulous. It's a big number, and I guess he's talking about the debt, Michelle Krebs. It's a big number, but I suspect if you took the other automakers and pulled out the EV business, you'd find it to be similar. I mean, Tesla for the longest time didn't make any money. EVs currently account for around 6% of sales, though they are growing quickly, she said. Absolutely. We believe no US automaker is making EVs profitably aside from Tesla. Well, they had that sort of first mover advantage, if you like. But again, they went through a long period of time where they weren't profitable. So fabulous that they are now. Adding that EVs are likely to be a material drag on near and intermediate term earnings. Absolutely. Automakers are using the proceeds from the profit beasts like the F-150. So I'm assuming now they're not talking about the Lightning. They're talking about the ICE-engined F-150, the Ram 1500, the Chevy Silverado. Okay, they're definitely talking about ICE engines then. And the Toyota RAV4 to pay the costs of the transition. Okay. They're plowing a lot into R&D. They're spending big on new battery plants, new assembly plants, Krebs says. Fabulous. The intrigue. Gas-powered vehicles are disappearing despite their money-making ways. The latest casualty of the race to EV is the Chevy Camaro, which General Motors is discontinuing in its current form. Yeah, I mean, they're kind of cool to look at, but is anyone really going to miss them? Oh, don't hate on me. Please don't hate on me. Look, I used to like the 68, 69 Camaro. I'd love one of those EV swap. That would be fabulous. There probably is. Actually, let me know in the comments below if there is an EV swap Camaro. I remember the Mustang. What was that called? Something Devil, I don't know. That green and black Mustang. You probably know what I'm talking about right now. There was EV swap that just did burnouts everywhere. I mean, what a selling point for the EV market, I think. I think the biggest sell for EVs is quite simply the torque and acceleration. I mean, that alone, seriously, I talk about it all the time. I'm going to stop talking about it for this video at least. Okay, blah, 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 blah. All right, let's move along. The high costs of Toyota's EV blunder. Okay, this is something I hear about a lot. When I was at Fully Charged Live in Sydney, I made a little bit of a mistake and spoke to a very enthusiastic EV, and I'm enthusiastic as well, but EV proponent. And I did happen to say, look, I thought Toyota's done well with at least their hybrid side of things. And whoa, didn't I get a reaction to that? And how far Toyota is behind in the EV race. Yes, it's true. I know it. But I think everyone's discounting Toyota. I haven't even read this yet. The high cost of Toyota's EV blunder. The automaker icon has been slow to accelerate in the electric vehicle era. We know this. Japan Inc.'s latest and perhaps most fateful misstep. Maybe so. I hope it's not fatal. It's fateful, but I hope it's not a fatal move. But I wouldn't be betting against Toyota at this point in time. All right, let's get a little bit of this. If you're wondering why Japan continues to make it easy for China's economy to race ahead, look no further than events at Toyota Motor. In decades past, Japan's most celebrated name disrupted the US and Europe with the innovation and productivity methods the West struggled to match. Now, a similar disruption is happening to Toyota. The electric vehicle revolution. Tokyo was slow to recognize risks driving a Japan icon off the road. Okay. And Toyota's myopia is systematic. These words are so big for me. Toyota's myopia, oh my goodness. It's no wonder I can't even talk today. Myopia is, come on, Joel. And Toyota's myopia is symptomatic of Japan's broad struggle to get its economic groove back. Yeah, it's a problematic. I mean, Toyota is a massive company over in Japan, and yeah, it's sad to see this. The good news is that the officials of Toyota City are realizing their blunder and mulling the noteworthy EV pivot. The bad news is it might already be too late as Tesla, Detroit, Germany, and China beat Toyota punch. They have beaten them to the punch, but they're still a massive company. What happened? Massive as in Toyota is still massive. Toyota's success since 2003 in selling hybrid cars like the Prius made it a darling of environmentalists and the bigger threat to Detroit. But in recent years, CEO Akio Toyoda, whose grandfather founded the automaker in 1937, dismissed the appeal of EVs. It's a tough call, isn't it? I would hate to be a CEO of an automaker right now, trying to make a decision as to how hard or not we go. I mean, the die-hard EVs will say, just go 100% EVs, but I think that would be terminal for their business. But at the same time, if you drag your feet too long, you end up being looked over. It's true. I mean, you don't think, of course you don't think of EVs when it comes to Toyota because they really don't have EVs, certainly not in any mass way, which is sad because Toyota is such an excellent manufacturer. I mean, I am an automotive mechanic, and I've always said that if Toyotas were the only car in the world, I'd probably have gone broke back when I was mechanicking. But it's seriously, they're such a great car. Anyway, in December 2020, Toyota told an industry Toyota told an industry conference that EVs were overhyped and posed no threat to his company's global market share. Yeah, he's kind of wrong about that. What's more, he suggested that veering in the direction of Tesla and its ilk would devastate Asia's number 2 economy. Tough call, isn't it? I mean, yes, you don't want to be the first. As I mentioned earlier, Tesla was so unprofitable for so long. I mean, how often did Tesla flirt with bankruptcy? And I understand the reasoning behind it from Toyota, but anyway. If Japan is too hasty in replacing gasoline-powered cars, Toyota declared, the current business model of the car industry is going to collapse, killing millions of jobs. Again, it's hard. I mean, depending on when you look at it, I think from a Toyota's perspective, it would be interesting to sit there and try and make that decision about whether we're going to go super hard when it comes in super full-on mass production of EVs, when you kind of look around and think, okay, we're a huge volume producer of cars. If we just produced everything EVs from now, where would the infrastructure come from? And I think that would have been a tough call to make at the time, but I think that the smarter manufacturers are definitely finding that, if you'll pardon the pun, hybrid between the two. As in still selling some internal combustion engines, but moving their way slowly or quickly over to EVs. And I think that's maybe where Toyota has gone wrong. But I still stick by my don't write off Toyota yet. They're a big company. And look, they've had a lot of time to develop their hybrid side of things. So at least they've dipped their toe in the water, even if they haven't gone for a full swim yet. The period has since been kind to Toyota's legacy as an industry. This period since hasn't been kind to Toyota's legacy as an industry leader. Earlier this year in January, CEO Toyota announced he is stepping down. As Toyota said at the time, the new team can do what I can't do. I now need to take a step back in order to let younger people enter the new chapter of what the future of mobility might be. Well, you must applaud him for recognizing that, maybe he's not the right person. All right, let's get through this. We're just talking here. Women are less likely to buy electric vehicles than men. Here's what's holding them back. The United States is pouring more money into electric vehicles infrastructure and rebates, but safety and affordability could be behind the gender gap between men and women owners. That's very true, actually. When I go to think about it, I don't know a single, as in a woman who's chosen to go out and buy an EV. It seems to be a real man thing, doesn't it? A few months ago, Renee Rusak and her partner of 30 years embarked on a road trip from their home to Seattle to Whistler, Canada. My sister worked in Whistler for a little while. This was different from past travels. They were driving their recently purchased electric car, a used Volvo. I don't know which model Volvo it is, but I really like those electric XC40 Volvos. They're a good-looking car. The trip was over 200 miles each way, and they used a phone app to carefully map out where they want to stop for electric charging stations. Though their car could last over 200 miles on a single charge, they plan to recharge it twice each leg of the trip. I know this is where internal combustion engine people would be like, we wouldn't have to do that. We don't have to plan anything. I know, it's true. And look, I am always going to play devil's advocate. It does kind of suck that on a 200-mile journey, 320 kilometers, you have to actually plan for it. I mean, we could all jump in our cars and drive 200 miles, our internal combustion engine cars, and not even think about it. It's like, oh, okay, we need to get some gas right now. Let's just pull over and get some gas. I know. And of course, as it continues on, cold temperatures can drain the battery, which we know, and they didn't want it sputtering out in the middle of nowhere. Well, I don't know that an EV would sputter out. I think it would just come to a stop, well, with some warning, of course. The couple had another big consideration in planning their travels: personal safety. They made sure to only drive during the day and to choose charging stations at malls and parking lots. Understandable. I understand it. Now, I'm still don't see where it's getting to the male-female part of this. While most people might consider the electric car to be a modern invention, okay, they've been around since the 1800s. Let's read this anyway, because this is one part I didn't know here. While most people consider, I knew the 1800s, but while most people consider the electric car to be a modern invention, they've been around since the 1800s. Clara Ford, the wife of Henry Ford, founder of the Ford Motor Company, drove an electric car, as did other wealthy women of the time. These cars were seen as women's cars since they were cleaner and easier to use because you didn't need to crank start the engine. Good point. Women were presumed to be weak, timid, and fastidious to want to drive, or too weak, timid, and fastidious to want to drive a noisy, smelly, gasoline-powered cars. Well, that makes me too weak, timid, and fastidious because I don't want to drive a smelly, gasoline-powered car. Thus, at first, manufacturers, influenced by Victorian notions of masculinity and femininity, devised a kind of separate spheres ideology about automobiles. Gas cars were for men, electric cars were for women. Interesting. I didn't know any of that. Fast forward today, and despite the fact that consumer choices were viewed as more environmentally minded and stereotyped as feminine, men actually make up the majority of electric car drivers. Yes, true. Yeah, interesting. That is true. I'll read that again. Fast forward to today, and I'll read it better this time. Fast forward to today, and despite the fact that consumer choices viewed as more environmentally minded and are stereotyped as feminine, men actually make up the majority of electric car drivers. A survey conducted last January by consumer advocacy, non-profit Consumer Reports, with over 8,000 respondents, offer some insight as to why. What were the numbers? So if women are being less exposed to them, this story is dragging on too long. Sorry, let's just get to the point. What were the numbers? It doesn't even show the numbers. Okay, at the time of the survey, 70% of electric cars were purchased by men. Actually, that's a lower number than I expected, as half of all car purchases in the United States were done by women. Interesting. Okay, yeah. I think we've read enough on that one. Okay, Ford reveals Explorer. I like the new Explorer. Have you guys seen it? I think it looks fabulous. Ford reveals Explorer electric crossover based on Volkswagen platform. Ford on Tuesday revealed a new Explorer, but it's not the Explorer we know in the US. Ford's newest Explorer is the electric compact crossover designed for Europe. It's the model Ford developed on Volkswagen Group's MEB modular platform designed for its mainstream electric vehicles. We have an ID4, Volkswagen ID4, over in Germany, in Leipzig, and I guess that's the platform it's built on. It looks like about a very similar sized car. The name is an obvious link to Ford's mid-size Explorer, which is also sold in Europe, and the design is also meant to evoke the rugged, boxy lines of the vehicle's American counterpart. Interesting. I mean, the front's very aggressive, but I don't really look at that personally. I don't look at that vehicle and say, oh, that's clearly American. Not at all, but that's just my opinion. Ford is short on powertrain specs, but the automaker said buyers will be able to choose between rear and all-wheel drive and experience 10 to 80% charges in 25 minutes using a DC fast charger. That's fabulous. 25 minutes, that's great. It isn't clear how big the battery is, but the similar ID4, okay, so I'm guessing it is the same platform. The similar ID4 from Volkswagen comes with a 62 to 82 kilowatt hour battery option. Ford will start sales of electric Explorer in Europe later this year and targeting a price of less than 45,000 euros. That is a fabulous looking car. I hope, I mean, if they're working off, look, Volkswagen aren't exactly up there on their EV front either, so I don't want to say it's the blind leading the blind, but yeah, Volkswagen, that ID4 has a lot of issues, silly issues, and of course, and this has nothing to do with the electric motor itself, the batteries a little bit, but just generally the car isn't that good. But I think that's a little bit indicative of Volkswagen across the board. Volkswagen's really kind of lost its edge a little bit, in my opinion, and others' opinions as well. All right, let's wrap it up. Last article, EV etiquette lesson. Please and thank you of plugging in. The please and thank you of plugging in. Our recent experiences at public chargers have us concerned that the EV charging experience might soon devolve into violence and mayhem. I agree with this completely. Too many folks are trying to use too few stations, a situation exacerbated by out-of-order plugs. Yes. Before people get disincentivized, disinvited, golly, man, it's been a long day, I'm sorry, people. Before people get disinvited from weddings or cut out of the will, let's see if we can address some of your messiest deportment dilemmas. Some basics. Always place the fork to the left. Okay, whatever. Is it rude to stay plugged in for 100% charge? I mean, I was there first. Sweetie. Bit condescending. It can feel incomplete to unplug at 82%. I don't think so. But if someone is waiting, don't get greedy for the full charge. It's impolite because a DC charger, odds are the last 20% will take as much time as the previous 80%. 80%, I mean, that's plenty. Plus charging to full accelerates long-term battery degradation. So it's rude to your car. This rule goes triply for Lucid drivers. Even at 80%, a Lucid has a 300 plus mile highway range. Plenty. I like to use the fastest charger. Is that wrong? If you drive a Mini Cooper SE that can accept a mere 50 kilowatt charge and you're hooked up to a 350 kilowatt charger when slower ones are available, you're making the angels cry. Yeah, that's understandable. But it's like taking most armrests when seated on the aisle of an aeroplane. You might be more comfortable, but you're taking space away from the person who can really use it. While some new EVs accept over 200 kilowatts, most older models can't. Know your limits. My Tesla can charge anywhere, so I plug in wherever I see an open spot, even if it isn't a Tesla station. Yeah, that's not a question. But also, unless you're desperate, please don't do that. Okay, unless you're desperate. Somebody's going to figure out how to yank that plug and launch it into low Earth orbit. Tesla offers an amazing and exclusive charging infrastructure that works like all the time. We can't say the same for non-Tesla stations. Definitely not for non-Tesla stations. So seeing Teslas at those stalls in instances where their own network is available can be frustrating. Think of the community. Yeah, okay, fair enough. Do I really have to log in to PlugShare or other reporting apps? Of course not. You don't have to help the elderly carry groceries either, but it's nice if you do. Okay. Reporting inoperative or damaged stations on apps such as PlugShare can help other travelers avoid frustration. It is nice when people do that. If everyone did it, it could save you frustration too. Crowdsourced info also helps stations organize repairs. Good karma, C-A-R-M-A for all. There are so many people who suck at this. Can I mock them? Sure, but that's mean. Once you've used to public charging, it's easier to forget how frustrating and confusing stations can be. Yes, it's true. At first, when I was charging, I had no idea what was going on. Some have touchscreens, some have what looks like a touchscreen but requires pressing a button exactly. Some take a swipe, some seem to need a lunar alignment before accepting a credit card. Very true. If you see someone struggling, help them out. You're not going anywhere for a while anyway. Maybe rip out this page and give it to them. Well, that's a nice way to end this. That was very funny and very true in a lot of ways. So, well, that's it. Thank you so much for the March news review, and we'll have some more content for you very soon. Thank you so much for listening. I should really be switching this over to full screen me, but I'm just getting used to this new program, so cut me a bit of slack, please. If you're still watching to now, wow, well done. I'm going to say it. Please like and subscribe. Comment if you like. Please comment. Someone comment, please. It'd be interesting to see if anyone comments if they've watched this long. I'm very impressed if you've watched this long or listened this long. So thank you so much. Really appreciate you watching, listening, whatever you're doing. And we'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.